What's up, YouTube fam? We got a movie review coming at you tonight, and we are going to be reviewing the movie The Way Back. It is brought to you by the director Gavin O'Connor, who's also always done some producer role in the movie The Accountant and the movie Warrior as of recently, and well notably. But this movie stars the person we're going to be talking a lot about, and not in Batman news today, Ben Affleck. And, I have to say, The Way Back, I remember when I seen the trailer for it, and I was overly excited because I'm just a sucker for these type of movies. But what I thought going into this movie and what I know leaving this movie, totally two drastic feels and just insight in it. Because I'm just going to be honest right now, this movie was not a sports movie. And I will explain to you why in numerous instances why this was not a sports movie. But this movie did follow Ben Affleck, who plays the character Jack Cunningham. He was a high school phenom. I mean, this guy was the best player in this all around town. He was the best player to ever play high school basketball. So he has all that going for him, but he walked away from the game. He left it all on the table. He had scholarships and everything lined up, and he walked away from it and just let it all go to waste. But years later, now he's offered a coaching job at his alma mater. His the coach that was there originally had a heart attack, had to leave the job, and he was the next best person to assume the position. But with everything that's going on in his life, it's really a challenge for Jack to assume this role. But anyway, it's just a lot to talk about. If you've seen the trailer, I mean, you automatically think that, Jack is a person who's dealing with alcoholism. He's an alcoholic. And rightfully so to think that, because even in the first few scenes, I mean, hell, every scene within the first 30 minutes has some type of liquor being shown in it. Whether it's vodka, whether it's gin, whether it's just beer. Every scene there is some form of liquor or alcohol being displayed. But also I gotta say, Ben Affleck is still jacked in this movie. So the whole perception of drunks and they just lose themselves and they all overweight and sloppy. Yeah, that's not happening because he's still jacked in this movie. But yes, that's because I think they want to display the idea that he's just not one of those standard drunks, but he's a functional drunk. He goes to work, he gets drunk at night, goes to the bar every night. The people at the bar know him, they know what he wants to drink, but he gets up and go to work. So, a functional drunk. But it truly does display the troubles and the demons that all revolve around alcoholism as an addiction. But even and when this goes on to you, it doesn't. This movie doesn't, because again, alcoholism isn't truly the issue here. Because one thing I noticed is that if alcohol is the problem, then the movie should have some resolve about how to deal with alcoholism, and it does. But it wasn't just the main focus, because he wasn't an alcoholic to a point it jeopardized everything else. I mean, soon as his ex-wife stepped into the picture, he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to drink today." But nonetheless, whatever. But anyways, high school is a Christian school, and it's kind of funny because for it to be a Christian school, there's a lot of cursing going on in the movie, and there's no remorse for it. So you're just like, but it's cool. But what this movie truly is about is, Jack Cunningham bond with the kids that he's coaching. He sees himself in some of these kids, and it's truly not about the idea of it just being a sport, but it's about the lessons and the morals that basketball and cohesiveness and brotherhood can bring about while playing it. And and in more ways than enough, and I'll get to when I get to my notes, it's really about the maturity of these boys to men. You see each one of these basketball players, a very diverse team, which is amazing, that was on display. See them go from not being serious about the game, either troubles at home, minor distractions in school, to ultimately becoming, not champions, but just contenders because they didn't have the championship mentality or spirit. They were taking his jokes. They didn't have a winning culture. But you see them really not only displayed on the court, but in things they do in life. Because each one of these kids have their challenge that is really put into display. And like I said, Jack's character is, he sees a lot of that in them. And he just tries to be the mentor for them. And while this is happening, his love for the game, he's one of the best players to ever play. He gets motivated again. He gets back into it. Why he doubted himself if he really wanted to do this job. To him, ultimately stepping up and swinging for the fences, and like truly empowering these young men. But we learn a lot about Jack's character, because again, it wasn't about the sport, because once the kids got good, that just wasn't the end of the movie. Jack is really truly dealing with a lot of mental health issues, whether it had been depression, or just the lack of grieving, because Jack, he lost his son, he split with his wife, and the way how he answered, he lost his son to cancer, in the story you see some other stuff that happened, but he lost his son, and it drove him to alcoholism. He's still very angry. He despises his family and his sister, who has a family, because of this, and he had some issues with his dad. I mean, he spited his dad. As good as he was in basketball, he spited his dad because of the relationship that they didn't have, and he just dropped the game of basketball with a full ride to Kansas because he wanted to, he wanted to really be in spite of his dad and hurt his dad in a way, and he lost his dad, so he never grieved and dealt with that correctly. His son, his wife. It's just a lot going on right now. He had a very, very bad relationship with his dad, and it just was a lot going on. And while the basketball team is winning, you want to cheer for the game and the sport itself. You find yourself just cheering for humanity, because you just want to see this guy get back in the right path and just truly deal with everything that's going on with him. And it's very surreal in this day and age, because a lot of people deal with their mental health issues by some form of alcoholism or just any type of whether it be drugs or whatever it may be, as a form of relief. But that's just a temporary patch, as you see in this movie. It never gets easier with that. So it's really cool, because this movie really shows you the importance of dealing with your mental health. Otherwise, you'll just be, swirling out of control. So while this emotional ride deals with mental health and, the lack of grieving, it really shows the story of perseverance and resilience. And because we see this character hit rock bottom, literally, and the title, The Way Back, it shows you the journey on how he got back to being the person that he should have been, the person that his ex-wife believed that he could have been, the basketball player, the icon, the figure for these men, that these young boys that he should have been. So a lot of that is going on right now. I will say, while all this is happening and while this, the story seems really thick and emotional as it may be, there are some laughs and comedy in this movie. It really is embodied around profanity for what it's worth, but hey, it's there. You find yourself, smirking and laughing at little thing, but not a really overbearing presence of comedy. Ben Affleck was absolutely amazing in this movie. I can't stress enough. He was clearly the star in this movie. But like I said, I thought the diverse cast with the kids and for showing as a basketball team, I think that was really cool to see that. Because typically in movies, the black player's the star, but we saw it. It wasn't in this case, and we saw an array of good people of different ethnicities being good. So it was good. But this movie wasn't a love story, because there could have been elements where they could have really forced it to have went that way, but it wasn't. And this movie wasn't a sports movie, because they could have had things to really symbolize the way of it being a sport and competition, and it ultimately being about that. I mean, some of the games, they didn't even show the games in its entirety because they didn't want to make it the focal point. And the basketball theatrics was okay as far as how the games were played. Was nothing really exciting that you had found yourself cheering for it in the theaters, but it was cool. But just like much like the team chaplain, who was the representative of the church that that traveled and prayed with the team, he said in the movie over and over that it's not about winning, but it's about turning these kids into better men, which again emphasizes the fact that it wasn't about sports because it was just strictly about life development in this movie. And it was about the kids growing into men, and it was about Jack Cunningham bouncing back, finding his way back to being the man that he ultimately always could have been before he never dealt with his mental health. So you see how in this movie how to properly deal with that, to really deal with your resources, and and what can happen if you don't handle it. So I thought it was an amazing story for what it's worth, and a truly an amazing reference for people to be able to watch and view, to really take something out of it, to apply into their real life, to really dealing with something that's super important that needs to be more in the conversations day and age. So I love this movie on that note, absolutely did. And the ending, I know some people's not going to like the ending, but if you listen to this review, hopefully you understand the movie ended the way that it needed to end because of what this movie was about. And I can't stress enough, wasn't a love story, wasn't a sports story, wasn't about alcoholism. It was strictly about mental health, and how if you do not properly deal and handle with your mental health, contacting your resources and therapy in some sort, how bad and how swirling out of control your life can be. And it could lead you to alcoholism. It could lead you to misdoings. It could lead you leaving big opportunities on the table and not viewing the world, not being a good husband or wife or a father or whatever it may be. So I love this movie. I love the story that it's told. I hope you guys do too. This movie comes out March the 6th, so it's coming out this week. And when you actually go see it, come back in the comments and let me know what you think. But as always, people, thank you for viewing. Catch you for the next one.